Hello everyone, Kia ora koto, naumai, haere mai, and welcome to this edition of PaNZIT, the podcast. I'm Joseph Tehal, coming to you from Wellington, New Zealand. Firstly, thank you to all our listeners and viewers. It's really heartwarming to see your support, your feedback, and just continue to subscribe, like, and share. So isn't it, Mike? It's really nice to see how people are responding to our podcast from our really, it's just the beginning, but I think it's all right.
Yeah, and a little bit of a housekeeping actually as well, Joseph. We started our website, so www.panzitpro.com, where we upload all the episodes. So if you want to, revisit those previous episodes, we now have 5 episodes. So it's all posted there. We'll be posting other information about New Zealand, our personal journey here in New Zealand, and all other good stuff that you guys can use in on whatever things that you might need it. So we'll post information there as well. So we're just starting it. It's not yet finished, but the website is up and running.
Thanks for that, Mike. And today, as part of our cloud series, we are really stoked to be joined by no other than Google's James Duncan, all the way from New York City. James is a solutions architect from Google. Hey James, what's up at top? What's happening?
Good morning. How are we going?
Yeah, good man. What time is it in New York today? Right now?
It's currently 3 p.m. on Wednesday, so we're a day behind you guys there. So heading into summer though, so at least it's getting warmer, which is nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, here in Queenstown, I'm in Queenstown by the way, so it's getting colder as well. I'm wearing a jacket right now, so yeah. And you get the view here. So I know James' favorite place is Queenstown as well when he was back here in New Zealand.
No, it looks beautiful. I miss seeing trees. There's not a lot of trees around me apart from the ones inside the apartment.
Yeah,
otherwise it's concrete and glass.
Exactly. New York is a very busy place. I was there 2 years ago and kind of miss traveling really. Are you able to go out at all?
Yeah, so New York's been pretty good. They've started reopening to, I guess, in the last maybe 2 or 3 months. Restaurants are now allowed to have 50% occupancy inside, and most of them have actually built relatively decent outdoor dining areas, which is quite nice. There's not many times you get to eat outside in New York.
Correct, al fresco style.
So no, exactly. But we've been working at home for the last 13, going on 14 months now. So we're not quite as lucky as everyone back home. I have to say it's been a little tough watching friends and family enjoying life relatively normally over summer while we're locked up inside, not doing much.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, so when is your schedule for vaccination? I heard from other friends in the US that they have some scheduled already.
Yes,
a friend from Texas,
As of Tuesday in New York, anyone over the age of 30 is able to get their vaccine. So I've had my first shot, so I'm looking forward to my second shot in a few weeks. So it's starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is nice.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, and I think the U.S. government is going to implement a vaccine passport as well. So, that might be your gateway going back to New Zealand.
Yeah, I think the little vaccine card we got is going to become very valuable. Hoping it will allow us back into New Zealand without quarantine or some sort of self-quarantine or some other restrictions. Sure. So we'll see how it goes.
Cool. Anyway, so we segue a little bit. I'm going to, ask you to introduce yourself, James. Tell us a bit more about, what you do in Google as a solutions architect. What keeps you busy now that you are actually always at home, working from home? Things that you do outside work. Are you still playing games? And what are those exciting things that you do these days? Really?
Most of my life at this stage is spent exactly where I'm sitting at my desk. It's either watching YouTube, working, playing some video games, or I move a whole 2 meters that way and watch TV. So it's not that exciting, but ideally like going out and just seeing New York, exploring. There's still things going on. There's things are starting to open back up. Restaurants, I guess I said outdoor dining and restaurants is really nice. So as that starts to get warmer, it's just spending time outside with friends and seeing where it goes. But hopefully once, as we're vaccinated, we can start traveling and seeing a bit more of the United States, because we've been here, just over 2 years now.
Right.
One of those years has been spent in lockdown, so it's not ideal, but we want to get out there and do some more traveling. I guess
need to.
So no, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool. So I hear that upstate New York seems to be, doing really good. We have a colleague there that's, that works from that location, and they said everything's normal. It looks like maybe the city is a bit different than those,
Yes,
country.
Upstate's a lot more rural. It's smaller towns spread up the Hudson, but it's a beautiful part. We went upstate probably just about a month ago, and we just got Airbnb and hired a place for some friends, and just went up there, and it was nice to get out of the city and just sort of unwind for a few days. But I've got quite a few friends who've left the city and either purchased a place up there or renting a house for the year upstate, because it's nice just to have a bit of space.
Cool.
No, that's really cool. Maybe James, it will be really interesting to hear about your actual career journey. How you get to Google to New York, and maybe just a bit of tips also as well to our listeners. What's your basic I would say guiding principles when it comes to your career, to your job, work ethics and standards, and pretty much share a bit of what do you exactly do at Google right now as well.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll start on my career journey. I guess that's a relatively easy one. So at university, I did 2 bachelor's degrees, one in computer science and one in commerce, because I enjoyed, I guess, both aspects of one, systems and computer science, and then also understanding how businesses operate and what they do. So after that, I started working at Westpac New Zealand, so one of our big 4 banks. I worked in their architecture and strategy team. So that was a lot of sort of understanding where the bank's going, what are the systems we need to sort of meet the bank's future needs or strategy, how can we consolidate technical debt. So there was a lot of strategy work I did there, and that was really interesting because I got to understand how banks sort of operate, some of the regulations financial services firms have to abide by. And then my sort of mentor or career coach that I sort of had at the time left Westpac, and he joined PwC. And then I went with him about a year later. So I went to then PwC for about 4 years in New Zealand. So that was mainly, once again, working with financial services and insurance firms. That's where I came across Mike. We actually ended up working on a shared client together, which was good time. We put it up. I think it might have been the first Azure OpenShift on Azure implementation that we had seen. So we had it. And that was
in the world, man. In the world, first in the world.
Yeah, it was like 3.2 was the first one we deployed, or 3.
No, 3. We started the POC at 3.4.
Right.
You guys
production
with
3.3. Was 3.4. Yeah, we did 3.3. So it was early days.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then we upgraded it 3.5. Yeah, that was good times, James. We really, talk about the things of making a design decision, because it's a government agency, and I can say that they have a very strong architectural process and governance, and we need to put together information there that the architects needs to review. Which is exciting. I learned a lot on that as well myself.
It was a good time. We embraced public cloud and containerization altogether. Oh, my laptop just locked. We did public cloud and containerization. Back then must have been 2017 or 2016, which I think was quite early for a government organization to sort of get into that. So we learned a lot during the journey and understanding sort of how to replicate that. And then from there, I was at PwC for about 3 or 4 years working on various customers. Actually, I think I worked on 3 or 4 different joint customers with the Red Hat team down in Wellington on the OpenShift clusters. And then I got an offer from Google, it would have been end of 2018, and they offered to relocate me to New York to start a customer engineering role in their financial services business. So that was a lot of fun. And then I spent the last 2 years sort of working as sort of like a sales engineer with large investment banks. I think the top top 3, top 5 investment banks in the world. So helping them build up public cloud, understanding how they can meet their regulators, what are designs we need to do in security, etc. And then recently I've transitioned to a solution architect role within our Anthos team. So a lot of that is public cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and understanding how we can build solutions across all the clouds everywhere to sort of deliver value to our customers. So most of my day at the moment is maybe 20-30% customer work. So working with customers, building out proof of concepts, new solutions, taking stuff into production, showing them how to do things in the way that we think they should be done, and working with them to sort of help mold those models into their world. And other parts of my day, either working on Terraform blueprints and Terraform modules. We're also working on building infrastructure through the Kubernetes resource model. So we maybe touch on that a bit later. So working out how to provision cloud infrastructure using the Kubernetes API. That's been a lot of fun. And then just working with other team members and engineering teams to sort of give feedback on products and help debug things as we're sort of working through new products. And that's about it. So it keeps you pretty busy.
Wow, that sounds like a really busy but yet exciting, because you said you're dealing with new stuffs and POC, so that's a lot of things going on in there. So
we're really at the sort of, I guess, working with customers at the cutting edge of our products. Even some of the products we're working on just before they're all unreleased products, so we're really pushing the edge.
And also it seems to me like your first job at Westpac gave you a strong headway towards financial services, because up to now you're dealing with financial services, is it?
Yeah, I didn't really I had no necessarily drive to ever work in financial services. There's no real interest, but I think once you're sort of in the door, it's quite I think the highly regulated entities sort of stick together, because once you have to follow those rules, it is quite a special skill set to sort of follow them through. And yes, they're different regulations here in the US and Europe, but at the core they're still the same behaviors. So I think once you're in the door with financial services, it's hard to escape.
I think because you've worked with PwC, the culture and DNA of PwC maybe help you carry on with your role as well. Because
100%. I think working at PwC was a great career move. You got exposure to lots of different industries, lots of different people. You probably got opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily get if you're working for the organization itself. So I working for, I think, any of the big 4 consulting firms definitely challenge you as a person, because you get thrown into situations that you don't necessarily feel comfortable in, or you might not quite want to be in. But you learn a lot. So I think the 3-4 years I did there taught me a momentous amount of things and a ton of experience. So that was really, really awesome.
So being a Kiwi born and bred, and although you mentioned earlier that Google offered you a job to work in New York, did you choose New York, or you really, and also, are you really wanting to get out of New Zealand, just like all those young kids who studied and started a career here? Is that something about moving out of New Zealand for a Kiwi?
I think so. Well, if you look back, the sort of the Kiwi culture was go do an OE, right? If you look back to my parents, when they were early 20s, they spent 3 or 4 years overseas in Europe. I think a lot of people in the UK, because it's easier as a Kiwi to go to the UK. So I think it's sort of the Kiwi culture. New Zealand's beautiful, beautiful country. I absolutely love it, but it's small. It's about 5 million people. I like to say Manhattan on a good day is the same amount of people as New Zealand.
I know.
So it's sort of crazy. So I didn't necessarily choose New York. I think I knew that I wanted to go work for one of these big tech companies. The Google New Zealand team were, I think, interested for me to have a role there, but obviously it's small, headcount is limited. And then I got an offer from the US firm, which was, I think, really cool, because this is the headquarters, right? This is where it all happens. And then the recruiting team was like, well, do you want to work on the West Coast or East Coast? And I said, well, I always wanted to live in New York, and that's where a lot of the financial service firms are, and that's sort of my specialty. So they're like, well, that's a perfect fit.
That's
in terms of leaving New Zealand, I think it is. We will definitely come back. We'll come back to New Zealand in the next 5 to 10 years and raise our family there. But I think the opportunities you get exposed to here is just phenomenal. Like we work with customers who have an IT budget of over $10 billion a year.
Wow.
Just on IT,
money.
right?
Yeah, that's
so
a lot. Yeah.
The exposure to these projects and challenges is just significantly different. And I think being part of that and figuring out how do we do things is really, really cool.
I just can imagine how different the magnitude is when it comes to the New Zealand scale, James. But I think Google must be supporting you really well on that. I remember watching the film. Is it the internship? Is it about the work culture at Google? It was really fun. It was really a good movie. Can you actually tell us if the Google work culture and Google in general is really similar to that, based on your experience?
It is, and I absolutely love it. It's a phenomenal place. The support is good. The benefits are good. I think the thing that I really enjoy is just how humbling and meeting internal people are. I was in a meeting yesterday discussing Envoy. You said you're in there with some of the core contributors, the people who've written a significant chunk of Envoy. You get to meet people, some of the co-founders of Kubernetes on a regular basis. So just the exposure of the talent and it's just that's really cool. But I think you see the office. Like the office is phenomenal. I really miss going to work.
Yeah. What's the best thing about it? What's the best feature of the New York office?
The food. You can't beat it.
You get your own chef, right? You guys get your own chef.
So I don't know the exact numbers, but I think in the New York campus there's about 10 to 12 restaurants.
Wow.
And I believe there was a YouTube video on Munchies last year that sort of go into the New York office, and they say they do about 25,000 meals a day. So it's really cool. Awesome quality food, great food, and then there's micro kitchens. And the office is huge. Like the 111 8th Ave, so our main building in the Chelsea campus, actually has more floor space than the Empire State Building.
That's good. Wow. You should share some photos, James, after the call.
I can share some from when we were there. But it's just really cool walking around, bumping into incredibly talented people all across the globe. Awesome. It's a very very mixed background, different education, all parts of the world. And it's really cool just to have that melting pot of culture in New York with a bunch of really talented people.
And that actually encourages you to learn more, because you get this you are surrounded with talented people, and I think that encourages learning as well. So anyway,
go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to ask you actually a little bit more, going back to a bit of a technical question here. So as a solutions architect of Google, and with your exposure as well on other public cloud, what do you think are the exciting features of Google that differentiate from other public clouds?
I think for me, what makes Google Cloud so special or quite different is I believe it's fundamentally built different, right? We've sort of built Google Cloud based on our internal platform that runs ads, that runs YouTube, that runs search. So there are a lot of technologies, and the methods we do that are fundamentally different, right? If you look at one thing that I really appreciate is like a global VPC. So by default, you have a global network at Google, just because that's how we do things. You're not regionalized to a VPC in region 1. Then how do you connect it to region 2? You have to do you have to do some pairing, or you have to do a VPN or something like that. By default, that's just out of the box. And then sort of like if you look where Google Cloud came from, like with App Engine, the sort of the serverless, not having to the PaaS, not having to worry about infrastructure was sort of our key. And then we realized we actually had to go from PaaS back down to IaaS, sort of meet our customers where they are and help them on their journey to modernize. So I think just the difference that Google's built, and then I think also our passion for open source. Look at like Kubernetes, right? That was a Google-based project. Istio,
absolutely.
Contribute to a whole bunch of open source projects. And I think one thing we're also thinking now is like, if you look at, I think what product was it? Was it Bigtable? when we released Bigtable, or was it BigQuery? One of them we released with our own API, and we didn't use an open source API, and that really slowed down the adoption of the product. So I think ensuring that our products are interoperable with open source APIs, allowing the ability to give customers portability and really meet them where they are is sort of where we are. And then I also think just selfishly, the engineering talent at Google is incredible, and just how products are engineered from the ground up is pretty phenomenal.
Well, you spoke. You're right, Mike.
So you touched about the open source Google, and you know me, I'm an open source believer and a supporter as well. So how is it encouraged inside Google? Do you guys have sort of like a mentorship, or a program of work that really push everybody to to embrace the open source idealism?
I don't even think it needs to be pushed. I think it's just sort of part of the culture. It's there's no mandate, there's no driving force. It's just people want to be open and share what they're working on. And I think we all realize, if you look at the success of Kubernetes, right, if the whole community gets behind it, like Google, Red Hat, IBM, everyone, Microsoft, everyone gets behind the product, the ecosystem just flourishes. And I think that's what everyone who's passionate about tech loves to see, is the success of these products and communities grow. That's right. So, but I think, like, I don't know how many we work on, but I believe there's hundreds or thousands of like open source products and releases that Google does, and it's a big driver like for us. And even like donating free compute to the open source products to help use the cloud to build or test or whatever they need to do. I think that's really key. I need to stop my laptop from locking.
And that's amazing to hear, because in Red Hat, where Joseph and I work, we the open source is on our DNA, and everybody are doing it by default. So it's just amazing to hear it from.
And just to add on that, Mike, and also James, because we both know that open source actually leads to a lot of innovations. What we have right now is basically because of open source. So on that note, James, what do you think are the exciting and emerging technologies that you think will be making waves in 2021, and which particularly of these techs are you most interested in? Why?
Interested with,
So I'm going to scope that down to one thing that I'm really excited about and working a lot of time on at the moment. So this is actually, it's sort of, I think the next evolution of infrastructure as code is actually the provisioning all of your public cloud infrastructure through the Kubernetes API. So we're starting to see like the Kubernetes API converge as the control plane for sort of cloud, right? It's starting to deploy our applications. We can now deploy our networks, a whole bunch of things with that. But now we're also seeing how we can deploy all of our cloud infrastructure through the same API. So all three, like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, all have tools out there at the moment. I believe Azure's and Amazon's are called the service operators, and ours is called Connector. It allows you to actually provision infrastructure via the Kubernetes API, and giving you the power to have a fully declarative interface to deploy cloud infrastructure or deploy infrastructure across all three cloud providers via the same API is really powerful. And I think that will lead to, adoption of public cloud and regulated entities much faster, as we're able to push policy controls to the left using like products like OPA and Gatekeeper. We can enforce policies that are really granular on our infrastructure across all of our clouds. And this gives the ability of like a or a security team to say, hey, I want nobody across all of my clouds to have outbound firewalls, say for port 80. You can push that to one Git repo, and then that policy can be enforced across all of your cloud infrastructure. And I think that ability is really cool. So seeing, I think the Kubernetes API for me sort of become the one-stop shop for provisioning applications, networks, infrastructure, whatever you need is going to be really cool.
Yeah, by the sounds of it. There's no stopping.
And I think.
Adoption. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, Joseph. I get excited with what you're telling me, James. That's why I jump in it. And I think we've seen the emergence of that thinking in Azure as well, and Microsoft and AWS, where they open their API, right? So, and the players like Red Hat is also working an open source project that actually will allow you to control Kubernetes, whatever flavor of Kubernetes platform you have, to instantiate, delete, and even what you call this, uh, make application portable across three, cloud. And I think that is really where the future is going to, especially when enterprise are really, when we see it moving towards microservices, and when applications are in microservice and possibly stateless as well, that really that portability is really going to be useful, and that gives the customers or the enterprise freedom to control their destiny, whichever public cloud they want to put their workload, and answers the problem, the ancient problem of DR, or active implementation.
And I've seen plenty of customers, right, who say running OpenShift on-prem, then they're running an EKS cluster in Amazon, and then they're running a GKE cluster in Google. So, and that's what they want to do, and it's obviously de-risks. It gives them the options, and it gives them portability. And it's now, how do we manage and give the customer a unified experience across all three of those? Because Kubernetes is, I think, a great infrastructure platform, but for many users, it's not it's not really easy to use. It's not intuitive. So providing abstractions on top of that, right, and sort of pushing Kubernetes down to down further in the stack, and building abstractions and tools on top will really help, I think, the ecosystem grow. And to be fair, I still think we're only early days in the adoption of Kubernetes. If you look at, say, any of the big companies I've been working with, it runs a slither of their workloads, and they're still learning how to use it, how it's going to fit in. And then you've got some customers who are sort of just jumping that gun and skipping Kubernetes directly, and then working with abstractions like Knative, but it gives you the sort of PaaS or serverless type experience on top of Kubernetes.
And people has been talking for years about no touch provisioning and so on, no code type of implementation. And the more the artifacts are built towards that principle thinking, I think that will happen very soon. So in line to that, so I'm going to ask you something about your own opinion, if you can, the prediction about the future adoption in cloud native development space. What do you think will be the big thing that will happen based on your observation?
I think all customers, or I say most customers will end up in cloud. There's going to be some customers work with who like high frequency trading. They have to be co-located next to an exchange, and due to physics, light only moves the speed it does. You can't change that.
That's right.
So I think we'll see over the next 5 years. To be fair, the majority of enterprises really adopting public cloud. I think most are playing with public cloud, whether it's generally one of the big three, and then they're figuring out really how to scale that out to their organizations, how to their business. So I think over the next 5 years, we'll start to see that. And then I'll also we'll start to see the abstractions built on top of Kubernetes and on the service meshes. So really having portable workloads across any of the cloud providers or any infrastructure. And then I think what is also key to remember is there's the hybrid cloud's going to be around for the next, who knows, 10, 20 years. That's not going anywhere soon. So really giving customers common API and common experience, no matter where they choose to run their workloads. And then also seeing the edge computing around customers running, say, Kubernetes in their retail shopping mall or in their restaurants or in a power plant. And I think we're really going to see the unification of that Kubernetes API being the control plane for your workloads and infrastructure everywhere.
So you touch one of my favorite topics. This is edge computing. So this is where I think the future is going to, at least the competition between public clouds and on-prem provider like Red Hat, and other players there. So edge computing, the problem is, of course, you need to have a smart application actually to handle which of the data you're going to process on edge on which
Yep.
data you're going to send it to your, main data center for serving purposes or for locality processing. So these things are still being thought of, and the problem on this is, you wanted you wanted your data to be processed really fast, but the problem with velocity or is always there. So these things are still going to evolve in the future, and I want to know what is Google's play on this, because I know that you guys are Google right now are all pushing public cloud. I haven't seen Google doing the edge computing conversation, at least in that space.
So what I can talk about is sort of our
All right. Yeah.
is sort of like our Anthos play, right? Allowing you to our Anthos play initially from sort of when we went to go to market was giving you a software defined hybrid cloud strategy. You can deploy Anthos effectively either on VMware, on bare metal, whether it's RHEL, Ubuntu. So that was our play, giving you the consistent software API. Yeah, on so wherever that operating system may be, you could deploy Anthos. So to a Google managed Kubernetes distribution, along with some of our other tools like Anthos Service Mesh, which is a managed and supported SDO version, and then configuration management, which allows you to sort of sync all your clusters together from a central control plane. So our play at the moment is allowing you to sort of push that software bundle to any infrastructure that you currently own. Yep. And then tie that back into Google Cloud, which would give you the ability to see all of your clusters, ensure they're all up to date, have a distributed service mesh across them, ensure that we can push configuration everywhere. But I think all cloud providers are sort of going down the same path, giving their customers a consistent experience, whether they're running on public cloud or off public cloud. And you think of some of the things like Google's released recently is like BigQuery Omni, which is our serverless data warehouse offering, now allows you to query data stored in S3 and run that on Amazon. So the customer gets the same interface, the same experience, but their data is across Amazon. So it's now giving that customer, I think what customers really want is that unique, the single pane of glass, that single API, that single experience across all. Because if you look at even if you look at say OpenShift, EKS, AKS, GKE, they're all Kubernetes distributions, but they all have their own differences in how you provision nodes, how you do storage, how you interact with it. And then you look at three clouds, or the three main clouds, AWS, Azure, and GCP. They all have different IAM structures. They all have different network structures. Their VMs still all look differently, and that's a lot of things to learn and manage and govern for enterprises. So trying to give them a common set of APIs or understanding or even concepts that they can then apply to their designs, I think is key. And then once again, it all ties down to giving customers what they want, and that's a nice experience that's portable, that they can take anywhere, and hopefully is open source.
Awesome. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things happening, and from the standard search engine that I know of Google in the past, it has evolved way than we can imagine. And on that note, James, I know a lot of people out there are interested to learn and build their career on public cloud, and maybe most specifically on Google Cloud. So what advice would you give them when it comes to training and certifications that's available for them out there?
I think learning any public cloud is going to be a great skill to have. Whatever flavor it is, as you choose. Obviously, I think GCP is the best public cloud, but depending on where you're working or what you're doing, work with the public cloud that your organization is currently using. I think get hands-on as early as possible. And I think, as you said, the certifications, I always like to start with the architect certification for any of the cloud, because it gives you the fundamental concepts of how the cloud stitches together. And I think once you can understand why you would use a NoSQL database versus a SQL database versus compute engine versus GKE, understanding those concepts, I think, is really key. And to be fair, a lot of those concepts are transferable. So I think any cloud architect course from any of the cloud providers would be the one I'd first start with.
Architect, yeah.
And then depending on what you want to specialize on, do you want to get into data engineering, application development, networking security, DevOps? And then I'd start to then specialize in what interests you, because then you can get more hands-on, understanding the ins and outs of the tools you'll use, how they behave, and best practices. So I think, and any opportunity you have to get hands-on earlier, the better, because you really learn the most about how these clouds work, and you can start to push their limits once you're hitting the command line.
Thanks for that, James. Just any last few words, probably your nuggets of wisdom and tips of advice when it comes to career, quickly. Yeah,
I think be open, be ready to sort of dive into any experience, anything that you may not like, just give it a go and try it out and learn. And then keep up to date, keep playing, always try to keep up to date, stay on the keyboard, see what's going on, and just experience. Download the latest Kubernetes version, build your own Red Hat cluster, deploy Istio, just give it a go. And I think that's how I got to where I am. Just learn, and it's all a lot of fun.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's really cool. And I think we're almost done, Joseph. And I want to take your words there, James. Be open, keep on playing, and continue learning. I think that's really a good thing to have, especially if you want to learn public cloud. Not only public cloud, but other IT technologies, I would say.
And have fun.
And have fun, of course. Yeah, that's number one. Because if you don't have, you are not having fun. Basically, you will not learn a lot. So with that, we're going to close this podcast. And thanks, James, for allowing us.
No, thank you for having me.
It was
good to see you guys.
Yeah. Cheers.
All right.
Enjoy Queenstown, Mike, and have a good day.
We'll do. I'm thinking of cycling again. I did a cycling Queenstown to Araton and back. So we'll do it again maybe.
All right, cheers everyone.
Cool.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Catch you all later. Bye.